Hi guys, I'm sitting here with my Project Life open today because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that you can do when you have gaps in your documenting. So this is my very first Project Life album, and in March of 2012, when I was just new to Project Lifing, I dropped the ball. And I didn't take many pictures that week. In fact, I think that most of the pictures that are in this week are ones that I kind of took that one day and kind of did a lot of more kind of like capturing things from Facebook and that sort of thing. Even put in the lottery ticket that we bought that week. And so I just put this at the time, my idea for kind of explaining why there were less stories, or kind of like less important stories, or lots of kind of sick photos and stuff, is to say, oops, this week I totally dropped the ball, meaning I didn't take many pictures at all, and kind of had to throw this layout together with very little to go on. And I mean, look at it. It's still really interesting looking and has plenty to it. It's all relative, I guess, but compared to the density of my pages from weeks before, this one felt a little sparse, and I just wanted to kind of recognize it. Now, you don't have to recognize it, because if you would imagine that this wasn't here, or even if it is there, you might not even know what that even refers to, because this doesn't feel to me, this many years later, like this page is all that sparse. So you can recognize it, or you can just not even acknowledge it. Back at this point, I was keeping track of my weeks, so it would be March 5th to 11th, and then we've got March 12th to 18th. Then we have March 19th to 25th. So if I were to miss a week, it would be a lot more obvious. But in my subsequent albums, I didn't do that. So here, for example, I have my 2013 album, which fits all in one. So I wasn't scrapbooking weekly like that anymore. I was scrapbooking, I was still doing it every week, but I wasn't recognizing the dates in the same way. So I would kind of mark the months in a rough kind of a way. So here's January. And then as you go through, we see February here. And then a couple of pages later, you're going to see March. But I'm not necessarily saying, like, woo, this is all March, or, these next several pages are March. I'm just kind of in a more subtle way marking the time as it goes. I do date some of these cards as well. But that's how my album went at this point. And so if there's a phase when I have less going on, or less that I'm documenting, or just less time to document, it's not going to be so obvious. So it's a little bit easier and not as important for you to necessarily mark gaps if this is your approach to your pocket scrapbooking. So for 2014 and 2015, I took a different approach. This is what my normal 12 by 12 scrapbook albums look like. I have them in these We Are Memory Keepers leather albums, and then I just put the date that it covers on the spine, so August of 14 to December of 2014. And so what I did here for these 2 years is I mixed my pocket pages in with my 12 by 12 layouts. So I have these 12 by 12 layouts, which are typically more special events, or bigger events that are kind of like noteworthy, that I have a bigger story to tell about. So this, for example, isn't necessarily a huge story. They went to Tim Hortons for ice caps. For ice lemonades, but I wanted to make a whole page about it. I had a lot to say, and I had some design ideas, so I made it into a 12 by 12. I also did some pocket scrapbooking over those years, and I would just put them in alongside my 12 by 12 pages, just in chronological order. So here we have the beginning of grade 4 and the beginning of grade 2 for my kids. I made some pocket pages. Here's a gap. I didn't have any pocket pages to put on the other side. I just left them. I didn't even put in decorative cards. I could have put some decorative cards here, or at least, made sure that was the right way. But I just left it. So sometimes when there's gaps in your pages, you don't have to do anything. You can just leave it. It's your book. Your family isn't going to criticize you for not having that finished, or I hope they won't anyways. Here's a trip that we took. So I like to do trips in pocket format because it's handy for documenting lots of related memories. So as you can see, those pocket pages are integrated right into my larger layouts. So here we have some more pocket pages here, more of your typical project life type stuff, like lists of things, tickets from different events, food pictures, me and my scrap room and the kids and whatnot, one of those little fortune teller things, things sent home from school. These are all kind of like classic project life things, even, the Runts package and whatnot. So I did that for 2 years. And again, it's less obvious that there are gaps when you're doing it in that way. Now in 2016, my intention was to go back to weekly project life, or at least monthly, several layouts per month of project life. And as you can see, from 2016 to 2019 fits in this album. So it obviously didn't go that way. We start off like a typical project life. I didn't do a cover page because I don't enjoy making cover pages. So I thought, it's my album, I'm not going to do a cover page. So we start with a cover like a card that just marks, okay, we're starting 2016, and just jump right into the documenting of everyday life. And we're going along just like my typical project life goes. We've got a bag from the Chinese restaurant, lots of things, the little funny thing that happened about The Walking Dead. We go on, and we keep going with some inserts. And here's something that I had put all of these cards aside, and I meant to project life this. And I left the gap in the page, so these were all empty, and these pictures were all kind of gathered and stuck into one, and then the rest of these were all blank, and I just kind of went on about documenting these subsequent weeks. When I came back, actually what ended up being several years later, I still hadn't done this. So all that I did was I just put everything into pockets, spread them out, threw away most of the photos. I only kept my most favorite ones that were kind of relevant to my own memories of the event, did a tiny little bit of documenting, and that's it. And it's okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. So we're moving right along in 2016, and we're going to come to a screaming halt where I stopped scrapbooking. I didn't stop scrapbooking. I did keep on scrapbooking, but I stopped doing pocket pages and focused on 12 by 12 layouts. So here we have from June of 2016 until September of 2017, I did not make any pocket pages. See my 12 by 12 albums for these stories. And so what I did was I just took a piece of beautiful 12 by 12 paper. I picked one of my favorite papers, one of those ones that you feel like, I don't want to cut into it, it's too pretty. Use that kind of paper in this kind of a situation. I cut it into the shapes and put it in, and I just did a little acknowledgement here that there's going to be a gap. What that does is it helps. My kids are going to be noticeably older in the next photos. I'm going to be noticeably older in the next photos. And it just acknowledges that there's some time missing here, because that's more than just a couple weeks, right? Like that's a noticeable chunk of time. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. If it was a smaller amount of time, I probably wouldn't have acknowledged it. I would have just picked up and started all over again. So here we go. We're diving into September of 2017. So it's a full year later. We're almost a full year later, and we're going along, and we're back to our pocket scrapbooking. We're back on the bandwagon. We're doing inserts. We're moving right along, and boom, we come to a halt again. So for this one, I wrote 1, 2, skip a few, and then we're in September of 2018. So again, it's almost a year so I went from October of 2017 to September of 2018. So we skipped a year. And here we pick up, and I've got, August of 2018. So that's the late August, so August 30th of 2018. And we're moving right along again. And we keep going. We only did a couple weeks and then we stopped again. And so I have another 12 by 12 paper and it says, yep, I took another break. And this is how I chose to acknowledge the gaps in my project life. But you don't have to acknowledge it. This is something that you do for you. So it's not, you don't owe anybody any apologies or explanations or anything. But just in terms of documenting and making it clear to the viewer who sits down and looks at this where the gaps are, I find it helpful. Another option would be to go back and document that time that you missed. That would be a very large project depending on how much time you missed, but it's a totally doable approach to gaps as well. It's not an approach that I've ever taken because I don't like going back and scrapbooking things from before. I've done it for some specific trips. But I don't just like to go back and document my everyday life after the fact, because to me, part of what makes project life really joyful is documenting these moments as they happen. And afterwards, I'm kind of like, why did I hang on to this receipt? I don't even remember anymore. So for me, the immediacy is part of what makes project life really satisfying. But if for you, that's not part of it and you'd rather document every single thing, then go ahead and go back and fill in the gaps. Here's another thing that I've done. I have this album. It says souvenirs, but I think I'm going to call it something different. I'm thinking about calling it bits and bobs, actually. I have a video all about this particular album, but this is a non-chronological, random mishmash of things, and there's not a lot of techniques or design that goes into this. It's more like just stick stuff in. These are things that were just hanging around my house that were from random times that I was just hanging on to that never made their way into a Project Life album. And I just didn't have the heart to throw away some of these things that are, pretty special. The card from the neighborhood witch store that my daughter loves, our favorite Indian restaurant. I want to hang on to these things, but I don't want to find where they belong in my Project Life album and figure out how to add a little pocket or a little insert, or it would take way too much time and make the process way less enjoyable for me. And so it's a lot better for me to just kind of stick all these things in here, and now I've got them, and this will be my mishmash album of random stuff. And so whenever I have a pile of stuff accumulating that I didn't get a chance to scrapbook, I'll just tuck it into these pockets, and it didn't take me very long to do this at all. And here is another album that I have that is sort of the same thing. It's not necessarily about gaps. It's more about, this was an old pile of photos and stuff that I had. Some of them I had made albums of before when I was in university, and just kind of like I cut out things so that I could fit as many photos as I could into, I only could afford to buy like one album or something. And so I have all of this, and they were just I had an album that had like those magnetic sticky sheets that pull apart, and then you put the photos in and then it sticks back down. And then I had stacks and stacks of just photos that I had developed and never really done anything with. So I went through them, I organized them the best that I could chronologically, and then I just stuck them into Project Life. And I can't remember who all these people were or what it's all about, but the things that I could remember, I would write down who was in the photos if I could remember, and the dates approximately. Like I knew when I moved to Calgary, so I wrote that date down, and tiny little apartment in Robert and Ida's house. These are, just kind of, I barely remember them now, so let's write them down and get it in. I used a Becky Higgins Project Life kit so that everything kind of like looks okay together. I still had this. I lived in Kensington, and I still had this little Kensington, the village in the city. That's me in a cowboy hat on my balcony in my apartment in Calgary. Just, visits that I took home, visits to Banff and the mountain. That's my apartment building. I lived about right here, I think. And the tower is right across the street from us. Like that's the view from my apartment. These are like concerts that we went to. I went all the way to Calgary just to see Ashley McIsaac, who's from Nova Scotia. get-togethers. We did a lot of partying. There were a lot of parties that are documented here. A lot of parties. Fun times, eh? Look, I had a perm. But see, there's not much. It's just kind of all stuck in here. This is actually a 12 by 12 page protector, and I just glued all the photos down to paper and then used washi tape to kind of show that they were different photos. Because I don't like it when photos look like it's all one. I like definition between my photos. Again, I barely remembered this, but I wrote down what I could. Back to 1999, our regular scheduled vacation continues. So here's another example of something with a gap. So something interesting happened here. So I made a mistake and I accidentally put these photos in here, and then I realized that they were the wrong time. So rather than going back and fixing it, I just stuck in some cards here that explain what happened. Like these trips to Ottawa happened at a different time. So I just put flash forward to summer 2020 because I needed vertical pictures. So that's why. And then I come back to present day, which was 1999 at the time. And I didn't even know what this was. When Mom returned home, for some reason, this photo of my mom and dad was here, and I didn't really know why. So I thought maybe she sent me this when she sent me her copies of these pictures. So I just put that in there. And I used to wear this hat all the time. All the time. It's like one of those newsboy hats, but I wore it backwards. I don't know if that was the style or if that was just a me thing, but my graduation, that's my graduation with my master's degree, not my PhD. And my mom's tag, for some reason, her name tag, my mom worked at Walmart. Yeah, it's taped down so that the journaling goes around it. So yeah, she sent me this for the time capsule, and I think it got taken out when I opened it for stuff about Dad. Right. Yeah, so we opened up the time capsule to get some stuff from memories from my dad when he passed away for his like celebration of life. And I think that this came out with those things, and so that's how I had that. But yeah, as you can see, it's very kind of classic Project Life style with the 4x6 photos on the top and bottom, and then your journaling cards along the center. And then sometimes I would cut down photos. If there was a lot of extraneous stuff, I didn't need the whole photo, I would cut it down where possible. More parties. Yeah. And I think this is me moving. Yeah, this is my new apartment in Halifax. Yeah, Christmas 2001. No, I hadn't. Yes. This is yeah, Scott's here, of course. Yeah, so that's when I met Scott, was when I moved back here after being in Calgary, and then another party. Yeah. And so this is all, we went to Cuba together and more, and I don't remember what all this stuff is, so I just put cards in to fill the space. In Scott's apartment right before his camera and stuff was stolen. Right. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's all about. And then I had a little crafting get together. We used to make eggs. Ukrainian eggs. We're not Ukrainian, but we got into Ukrainian egg making for some reason. And this is from back in 1995. And so again, this album kind of goes back and forth because it's just where I stick things, right? So it doesn't have to be, 95. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything. This is another kind of, I guess, time when gaps might happen, is when you're going back and filling in things, and you don't have to make it pretty. You can just kind of stick it all in there and jot down what you can remember, and whatever you can't remember, well, at least you've got the photo. So, more ideas of how to deal with gaps or just like intermittent stories. So, I hope that some of these ideas have been helpful. This is not an exhaustive list of things that you can do to deal with gaps. They're just kind of different approaches that I've taken. If you have other ideas, I'd love to hear about them. Please leave me a comment that outlines any of the ways that you have managed gaps in your storytelling or in your memory keeping. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure that you check out the comments to hear how other people have handled it, because there are lots of other ideas that I just didn't have or didn't choose to do. So thanks so much for watching, and have a really great scrappy week.